Supreme Court addressing church and state once again in a new ruling involving Catholic charities and unemployment exemptions and whether that's going to be allowed or not. And you might find interesting the lineup. How did it get to 9-0? Why did Sonia Sotomayor write the opinion? We break it all down for you on I almost combined a couple of shows on unprecedented. Sorry about that, folks. We sit at that intersection of law and politics, so you don't have to. And here's a clip. So why don't you kick it off? You want to do what do you want to start with first?
Let's talk about the Catholic charities. You started off with that. I have to say, I'm all for them when they do agree, even if it feels, like you said, kind of like strategic on her part. There's so much bad news. I like it, at least that they could agree. And I do like that they had like you say, liberal or more moderate justices write it because they're brilliant women and they're creating law. So at least I like that part. But okay, so basically what happened with the Catholic charities, and everybody who's been watching our show kind of has this, but I'm going to recap it again. The Catholic charities in Wisconsin wanted to opt out of paying taxes into the unemployment insurance program that the state of Washington had because they wanted to basically be a part of the Catholic Church's unemployment insurance program. And the Wisconsin Supreme Court said no, even though state law allowed for an opt-out for a religious organization, because the Catholic charities employed people who were not Catholic, served people that were not Catholic, and did not proselytize. And that's the key word in this opinion. They didn't proselytize. They evangelized, which was them giving to the poor or the needy or, whichever groups they were giving to. But at the time, they weren't like handing out teachings or teaching people about their religion. And so Justice Sotomayor said that, the government cannot prefer one type of religion or one type of denomination. So if you had a church, maybe Jehovah's Witness, let's say, where they would only be doing something like this if they were preaching at the same time, they would be granted the exemption. But the Catholic Church, who didn't believe in that being part of their charitable work, didn't get it. That is not being neutral. And the government has to be neutral. It can't prefer one or the other. And so it was unconstitutional for the Wisconsin to deny them the religious exemption based on that.
And to put it into some plainer English, the Mormons and the Jehovah Witnesses knock on your door, and the Catholics don't.
Yeah,
the Catholics and the Jews don't, and that's the difference between proselytizing and evangelism. It's really at the doorbell. And Sotomayor, it was interesting in her commentary. She had a great line. She said, "This test that we've established might be hard to apply at the trial court level, but this case is not that case where it's difficult. This case is easy." But listen, she developed the test, so they're going to have to live with it. But the way that works with Supreme Court is, if the trial judges have difficulty with the test and the standards that the Supreme Court established, sometimes they take another case to try to fix it.
Yeah.
So things are fixable if they see that the trial court levels are struggling. Like right now, we're watching the trial court levels, sort of struggle with all these emergency applications and the resulting half a paragraph decisions by the Supreme Court instead of 20 or 30 or 40 pages or more, and then always followed by some sort of statement or concurrence, which we'll talk about when we get to the gun cases, that go on for pages. And then the trial court's like, how are we supposed to interpret this? Although, for instance, in the we're not going to talk this particular episode about the immigration deportation due process issues, although they are rapidly moving up the chain to the Supreme Court with two blowout rulings by Judge Jeb Boasberg and Judge Zinnes in the last 48 hours against the Trump administration. But there, the takeaway was sort of, even though they were one paragraph long, was sort of like no-brainers. We could all understand it. Due process and notice through habeas corpus in the United States before you start deporting. I mean, that was the takeaway among three cases, if you want to just distill it to its essence. And while 100 pages to kind of put the fine point on that might have been interesting, we didn't need it. But for some other concepts, trial courts look for guidance from the Supreme Court. And we'll have to see how much guidance they're going to get from this. So 9-0, Catholic Charities, no church and state separation, really going to the free exercise clause of not the establishment clause, not a church and state issue per se, just treating all religions, regardless of their tenets, equally. But there's no requirement that a state exempt anybody. But if you're going to exempt some religious organization from some policy of yours, then you have to do it even-handedly and uniformly. I sort of agree with that. I sort of agree with that, right?
No, it did. And that's why they were all able to agree. Because if you are, you shouldn't probably preference that. It was clearly a Catholic. I mean, it's funded by the Catholic Church. It's part of the diocese.
Right.
Like it was like so
Catholic.
clearly part of the Catholic Church. Yeah.
I wonder if there was a struggle internally for Amy Coney Barrett, who's the super Catholic on the panel, who worked at, was a professor at University of Notre Dame and all that, to like write the opinion. But Sotomayor, she's 72, 73, I'm hoping we get a lot more years with her, but I'm glad she wrote that one. Welcome back. That's a show we call Unprecedented. It's all about the United States Supreme Court. We put it in context the only way we know how, without blowing smoke or sunshine. And you're already here on Legal AF, so take a moment, boom, hit the subscribe button to help us continue to grow this pro-democracy channel in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.